Happening now, breaking news. Disdain and disgust. That's how a federal judge describes his feelings for Michael Flynn's crimes as he scolded the fired national security advisor and delayed his sentencing. Did Flynn's team bungle his chance to walk free? Mueller's mysterious win. Federal judges side with the special counsel in a case shrouded in secrecy. Tonight, we're learning new details about a subpoena for a foreign company and what it might mean for the Russia probe. Without a foundation, the president suffers a big legal blow as his charitable foundation is forced to dissolve in the midst of a lawsuit. New York's attorney general arguing that the Trumps used the organization for personal and political gain. And border wall borrowing. The White House suggests federal agencies may help foot the bill for the president's wall, reversing course in a funding battle as the clock ticks toward a possible government shutdown. Did the president blink? We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world. I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room.
This is CNN Breaking News.
We're following breaking news on the stunning turn of events at Michael Flynn's sentencing hearing today. The judge offering a scathing rebuke of the fired national security advisor, venting his disgust and his disdain about Flynn's admitted lies, even briefly suggesting they may be treasonous. Flynn's team agreed to a delay in his sentencing after the judge suggested he might not go along with the special counsel's recommendation for little or no jail time. Tonight, the man who chanted "lock her up" at the Republican National Convention may have narrowly escaped being locked up himself. This hour, I'll talk to Senate Intelligence Committee member Jack Reed, and our correspondents and analysts are also standing by. First, let's go to our justice correspondent, Jessica Schneider. Jessica, this was a jaw-dropping hearing, and it ended with a cliffhanger.
A cliffhanger indeed, Wolf. No sentencing as we expected. Instead, it was nearly 2 hours of tough talk from the federal judge, who stressed prison time was not off the table, even though that's what Flynn's lawyers and Mueller's team essentially agreed to in their sentencing memos. It was a hearing that really went off the rails for Flynn's team, and now they have to wait to find out exactly what Flynn's fate will be. Tonight, Michael Flynn's sentencing is on hold after a dramatic 2-hour rebuke from the judge who hinted Flynn could end up getting prison time for lying to the FBI. Federal Judge Emmett Sullivan scolding President Trump's former national security advisor, telling Flynn, "I am not hiding my disgust, my disdain for your criminal offense." The judge even raised the question of treason, asking the special counsel's team twice if Flynn's conduct rises to the level of treasonous activity. Judge Sullivan also admonished Flynn for his work with the Turkish government, saying, "Arguably, you sold your country out." The judge later walked back both rebukes, saying he wasn't suggesting Flynn committed treason, and acknowledged that Flynn's lobbying for Turkey did not go on while he worked at the White House. The judge focused his real frustration and confusion on the circumstances surrounding Flynn's guilty plea, asking why Flynn admitted guilt, even though his lawyers accused the FBI of tricking Flynn into lying about his contacts with the former Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak during that January 2017 interview at the White House. The sentencing memo where Flynn's lawyers criticized the FBI may have been a major miscalculation and seemed to offend the judge, who said, "I cannot recall any incident where the court has ever accepted the plea of someone who maintained he was not guilty." Flynn finally admitted he was aware that lying to the FBI was a crime when he was interviewed in January 2017, and his lawyer responded no when the judge asked Flynn if he believed he was entrapped by the FBI. Judge Sullivan still gave Flynn several chances to rethink his guilty plea, but Flynn repeatedly told the judge he wanted to proceed. The judge asked, "Because you're guilty of this offense?" Flynn answered, "Yes, Your Honor." The judge told Flynn he should consider delaying sentencing until he is finished cooperating, saying, "The more you assist the government, the more you arguably help yourself at the time of sentencing." Flynn has already met with Mueller's team 19 times, but indicated in court he plans to continue providing information. So the question is, when will Michael Flynn's sentencing actually happen? Well, that is still undetermined, but it will likely be sometime next year after the two sides file status reports. Those are due by March 13th, and after that, the sides may agree to proceed to a second try at Flynn's sentencing. So, Wolf, we will wait and to be continued.
Yeah, he's got to wait a few more months to see if he's going to jail or not going to jail. He's 59 years old. Thanks very much for that. Let's get some more on all of this. We're joined by our chief national security correspondent, Jim Sciutto, who's been following the Flynn case very, very closely. Jim, seems like the judge was clearly going to give Flynn some jail time.
Well, it's a remarkable turn of events. Just in the last week, only a number of days ago, Flynn's lawyers were suggesting, as the president has repeatedly charged, that Flynn was entrapped by the FBI into telling lies. Then, yesterday, we see the accounts of those interviews where it's clear that Flynn repeatedly lied willfully, though he was given chances by FBI agents to correct his story. Today, the judge calling him before the bench and making him repeat multiple times, no, I was not entrapped. Yes, I take responsibility for this crime. And then the lawyers, for Flynn, sensing that as the judge was scolding him, in effect, with these phrases that Jessica talked about, you sold your country out. I am not hiding my disgust. This is a very serious offense. Judging that maybe the predictions that there was no jail time coming might be wrong, and that it would be best for them to delay, to punt, in effect, cooperate more, and hope for a lesser sentence at a later date. A remarkable turn, Wolf, in just a few days.
Yeah, I suspect the judge was doing him a favor, saying you better delay, otherwise you might be going to jail right now. So what's behind, do you think, Jim, this judge's stunning rebuke after the prosecutors, the special counsel's team, actually asked the judge for little or no jail time for Flynn?
Well, listen, the prosecutors clearly making clear to the judge and to the public that Flynn has been cooperating on a number of cases. The judge, however, not impressed possibly with the public charges, not just from outside, but from Flynn's own legal team, that he ended up in this place, not because he made a mistake, a miscalculation, broke the law, but that the FBI did something wrong. And we got a taste of that yesterday when we saw those records of those FBI interviews. Remember, there was some talk as the judge allowed them to be released that, well, maybe the judge is going to show that, well, there is some evidence that Flynn was wrong-footed in those FBI interviews, when in fact those records showed the opposite, that he was given multiple opportunities. Listen, judges have a lot of power in their courtroom, and though, as we've noted, this judge, opponent by Reagan, Bush, later Clinton to various posts, he was not impressed with those excuses, and he considered these lies consequential and deserving, it appeared, a possible jail time.
Yeah, very surprising indeed. How surprised do you think all this was to Flynn and his family who were in the courtroom?
Well, judging by our colleagues who were in the courtroom, their demeanor changed dramatically. At the start of the proceedings, they were smiling, his mother there, other relatives, Flynn greeting them with a smile when he entered the courtroom. By the end of it, after this upbraiding by the judge, their heads were down, their heads shaking at times, clearly reading the messages from the judge that their expectations might have been wrong. Maybe they got bad advice from their lawyers, the lawyers making a last-minute correction there. But certainly in the courtroom, based on our colleagues who were there, they entered with high hopes and they left with disappointment and perhaps some surprise.
What do we know about what else Flynn needs to cooperate on, Jim, and will it be enough for this federal judge?
Well, the judge made clear the more you cooperate, the more advantage you will have when the sentencing actually happens, this now a number of weeks away. And that's on two lines of inquiry. One, this case about illegal foreign lobbying that two of Flynn's former partners have now been indicted for. Flynn has not, presumably because he's provided cooperation in that investigation. But also the special counsel representative in the courtroom made clear that while Flynn's cooperation so far has been very helpful, it is possible he could continue to help, and that appears to be the strategy going forward, not without some encouragement from this judge saying, cooperate going forward and you may get a better sentence down the road.
Yeah, he needs to be a perfect cooperator over the next 3 months in order to convince this judge that he's not going to go to jail. Jim Sciutto, thank you very, very much. We have more breaking news coming into the Situation Room in the Mueller investigation. I want to bring in our crime and justice reporter, Shimon Prokupecz. Shimon, we just learned a little while ago details about a mystery case involving the special counsel. Presumably, this is a big deal for Robert Mueller.
Yeah, it's tremendous here because they've been trying to get this information from this company. What we've learned based on what's been just filed is that this is a foreign company, a company outside of the U.S. that is trying to argue that they do not need to release, they shouldn't be forced to release these informations pursuant to this subpoena that the Mueller team has given them because they're protected by their own country's laws. There are regulation issues, and they've been fighting this in secret, of course, for quite some time. And now this is a big win for the Mueller team. Clearly, this is information that is important to the investigation. They have been in court fighting this now for quite some time. And it seems as though unless this company appeals, goes higher to the Supreme Court, that they're going to be forced to release this information.
Yeah, this Court of Appeals decision says it's a corporation that's owned by a foreign country, country A. The corporation isn't identified, but presumably this corporation has activities going on here in the United States.
And whatever is going on, they're trying to obviously not release that information. And this company, when you think about the money that it's costing them, the amount of money it's costing them to appeal this is tremendous. So they're spending...
Because they're paying a penalty, too.
They're also paying a penalty. They have been held in contempt, and so they're paying a penalty on that. They're paying all of these legal fees. So whatever company this is, clearly have a lot of money, and they're putting a lot of effort into keeping whatever information the Mueller team wants secret.
They went to extraordinary lengths on Friday to keep reporters and everyone else off this floor so no one would know what was going on. They didn't want to see who was walking in, walking out. Are there hints, though? The name of the company, the foreign country involved?
Nothing. And they did. They went through extreme ways to keep things secret. They closed off an entire floor at the courthouse. They wouldn't let reporters onto the floor. So whatever is going on here is very sensitive to the company and probably very sensitive to the Mueller investigation. There are no hints other than that it's country A. But in talking to some folks, you see this kind of activity or this kind of fight from companies when it's usually financial institutions outside of the U.S. Who are fighting money laundering investigations. So it could be, and it's just pure speculation here, just on what we've read in these documents, this could be a financial institution. Obviously, the Mueller team, the special counsel, has been looking at money that flowed into the transition, into the time of that between the president into the inauguration, I should say. So this could be what this is about, but it's pure speculation. It could be a financial institution that Mueller is seeking information from.
I suspect a lot of reporters, a lot of people are trying to figure out the name of the corporation, the country involved. I suspect we'll figure that out fairly soon. All right, thanks very much, Shima. We're going to have a lot more on this story coming up. But right now, I want to turn to the other breaking news we're following on the Michael Flynn hearing and the reaction coming in from the White House. The president's spokeswoman defending Mr. Trump for his continued defense of Michael Flynn. Let's go to our chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta. Jim, there was a rare White House press briefing today, shortly after Flynn's hearing.
That's right, Wolf. And the White House at that briefing was continuing to claim that Michael Flynn was somehow ambushed by the FBI, resulting in his lying to federal investigators. But that flies in the face of what we heard earlier and what Flynn said in court today. Still, that detachment from reality was on full display here at the White House as the press secretary held a rare briefing with reporters, the first one we've seen in weeks. Proving that the White House briefing room is no courtroom and that when it comes to the truth, just about anything goes, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders all but accused the FBI of bullying former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn into lying to federal investigators.
The FBI broke standard protocol in the way that they came in and ambushed General Flynn, and in the way that they questioned him, and in the way that they encouraged him not to have White House counsel's office present.
Sanders made that claim despite the fact that Flynn had just admitted in court that he knew lying to the FBI was a crime when he made false statements to investigators about his contacts with the Russians. What's more, Flynn's legal team said he wasn't entrapped. But the press secretary was just echoing President Trump. He tweeted earlier in the day, "Good luck today in court to General Michael Flynn. Will be interesting to see what he has to say," despite tremendous pressure being put on him about Russian collusion. It's an odd line of attack for the White House, as the president once said he fired Flynn for misleading Vice President Pence about those contacts with the Russians.
Mike Flynn is a fine person, and I asked for his resignation. He respectfully gave it. He is a man who there was a certain amount of information given to Vice President Pence, who's with us today. And I was not happy with the way that information was given.
When pressed, Sanders tried to put some separation between Flynn's lies and whether the president colluded with the Russians.
Maybe he did do those things, but that doesn't have anything to do with the president directly.
Sanders also defended the president's recent attacks on his former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, as a rat for turning against Mr. Trump.
We know Michael Cohen to be a liar on a number of fronts, and the president's opinion is extremely clear on that front.
The press secretary later insisted the term rat was more than fair.
Using terms like rat and things like that to talk about people who are cooperating witnesses with the FBI.
Or people who are dishonest and lying.
Does he not have a broader responsibility to...
But the president and his team have hardly been honest with the public, like when Mr. Trump falsely said he didn't know about hush money payments to his alleged mistresses.
Did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels?
No. Well, you have to ask Michael Cohen. Michael's an attorney, and you'll have to ask Michael Cohen.
As the White House is back on its heels on the Russia investigation, aides to the president are signaling they want to avoid a government shutdown just before the holidays, hinting Mr. Trump won't demand that Congress pass billions of dollars in new spending for a border wall. Sanders made the questionable claim that the administration would somehow find the money without charging the taxpayers.
We're not asking American taxpayers for that. The president's asked every one of his cabinet secretaries to look for funding that can be used to protect our borders.
The president didn't close the door on a deal.
See what happens.
Well, you say that, but what about...
Too early to say, Sarah. Thank you. We need border security. Thank you very much.
Can you comment on them?
Now, there was a significant development out of the White House on another front, and that is the administration did move forward with a ban on bump stocks. Those are the devices that allow semi-automatic weapons to fire more rapidly and were used in the Las Vegas massacre last year. As for the administration's plans to find funding for the wall on the border with Mexico and money that's already been spent at federal agencies, it should be noted that would still mean taxpayers would be paying for something that the president said Mexico would take care of during the 2016 campaign. The press secretary said today the taxpayers wouldn't pay for the wall, but that's not true. It is clear at this point that is exactly what the White House plan is, to have the taxpayers pay for the wall. Wolf?
All right, Jim Acosta at the White House, thank you very much. Joining us now is Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island. He's a Democrat, serves on both the Intelligence and Armed Services Committee. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. Now, we don't know the name of the country. We don't know the name of the corporation. I assume we'll know fairly soon. But the fact that this company, this corporation, this unknown foreign country is going to these extraordinary lengths so they don't have to comply with a Mueller grand jury request, a subpoena for information, and that they're fighting this in rather mysterious ways. What does that say to you?
Well, it suggests that they have something to hide. They're using every opportunity, appealing decisions and using all their legal rights, which they're entitled to. But companies that have nothing to fear from disclosure don't go to these extremes.
What does it tell you about the Mueller investigation right now that they're going to this extreme to try to get this information, to get this company, this corporation to comply with this grand jury subpoena? And they're also dealing with all these other issues, including what happened to Michael Flynn today.
Well, Director Mueller is following the facts, and that's his job. He's an extraordinarily good prosecutor. And when obvious or at least suspect violations of the law occur, he will pursue those, and he's pursuing this. He's, at this point, just trying to gather information.
Because it looks to me like this is the thing, some people thought it was going to be over with by the end of this year, but looks like it could stretch on.
It keeps going and going, and I think that's because when someone like Mr. Cohen, not directly with Director Mueller, but in the Southern District of New York, makes his plea, pleads guilty to crimes and suggests indeed that the president might be involved, that expands it. When the owners of the National Enquirer seem to suggest too that they were involved, that expands it. So this is an investigation where it has to be pursued until all possible crimes are investigated.
The White House today, the press secretary, Sarah Sanders, said that Flynn's activities, the former national security advisor, what he said, the lies and all of that, had nothing to do with President Trump at all. What's your reaction to that?
Well, he was a national security advisor when he made those misstatements about his contacts with the former Russian ambassador. In fact, as the president indicated previously on he in fact candidly tell the truth to Vice President Pence. So there was an involvement here, whether it was in any way directed, inspired, or encouraged by anyone else in the White House. That's still probably be determined or investigated by Mueller.
Your committee, the Intelligence Committee, you're an ex officio member of the Intelligence Committee. They released two stunning reports yesterday. We've gone through them. I'm sure you've gone through them, yes, talking about Russia's penetration and involvement in the 2016 presidential election. The president hasn't responded specifically to those two reports that the Intelligence Committee released. But this morning he did tweet this, and I'll read part of the quote. Facebook, Twitter, and Google are so biased toward the Dems, it is ridiculous. Does that line up with what your committee found in these two reports?
No, it does not. It looks at Russian influence operations in the United States during the 2016 election and found that there was a consistent pattern. They favored President Trump. They would try to increase literally the turnout of Trump supporters and decrease the turnout of potential Clinton supporters. They did it very sophisticated techniques, looking at the algorithms, how they could get them to work for the Russians. And their consistent theme was to increase the president's vote and decrease Secretary Clinton's vote.
You know, it was another huge embarrassment to the president of the United States today when he was forced to shut down his charity, the Trump Foundation. The New York Attorney General writes this. She says, our petition detailed a shocking pattern of illegality involving the Trump Foundation, including unlawful coordination with the Trump presidential campaign, repeated and willful self-dealing, and much more. This amounted to the Trump Foundation functioning as little more than a checkbook to serve Mr. Trump's business and political interests. What's your reaction to that?
First, it's been uncontradicted by the president or anyone else. Closing down the foundation suggests there's a lot of truth there, and it is a stunning attack, really, and rebuke of the president. If he was using a charitable foundation for his self-interest, for his political interest, that's contrary to not only the law, but the spirit of what we'd like to think charitable foundations do. They help people.
Yeah, it reminds me. When he was forced to shut down Trump University, that was an embarrassment as well. Now the Trump charity, the foundation, shut down. Senator, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Wolf.
Jack Reed of Rhode Island. There's more breaking news just ahead. Will a judge ignore Robert Mueller's recommendation and send former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn to jail? And if so, for how long? Plus, the new mystery in the Mueller investigation emerging today. What is the company owned by a foreign government, and why is it now being ordered to comply with the special counsel's grand jury subpoena?